All right, so we hear it all the time, right? Stay active as you age. But what does that even really mean?
Right.
Like, how much is too much? Or are we even pushing ourselves enough?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive is going to hopefully make you rethink that whole staying active thing.
Okay.
We're diving into some fascinating research from Dr. Takada Akikazu.
Okay.
He's a Japanese doctor who specializes in aging.
Okay.
And let me tell you, he throws some serious curveballs at that usual advice we always hear.
He really does. He really does. And I think one of the most valuable things that he brings to the table is really understanding that our bodies change over time.
Totally.
And as they do, what we need to do to stay healthy also changes.
Absolutely. Like, you can't just keep doing the same thing you did in your 20s and expect it to work in your 60s and 70s.
Exactly.
And Dr. Takada is a perfect example of this. He's almost 90 and in amazing shape.
Wow.
But get this, he's never been a big exercise buff.
Oh, really?
I know, right? And he actually says he sees a lot of former athletes really struggling with their health after 80.
Huh.
And it got him thinking, maybe there's a different way to approach aging and exercise.
So it sounds like he's kind of like a walking testament to his own philosophy in a way.
He really is.
Which is really cool, you know? Like, to have that lived experience to back up the science.
Okay.
Because the science really backs it up. Like, when we think about overexertion, that puts stress on the body, right?
Right.
And while some stress can be a good thing,
Sure.
like anything, too much of it can actually have the opposite effect, like hindering your cells' ability to repair themselves as you age.
And that's what we want to avoid.
Exactly.
Because it's not about never exercising again. It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding that balance.
And that looks different for everyone.
For sure, for sure.
So where do we even start with figuring out what the right amount of exercise is for us as we get older?
Well, I think one of the first things, and Dr. Takada really emphasizes this, is kind of challenging that more is always better mindset.
Ooh, that's hard.
Yeah.
Especially in a world that's constantly telling us to push harder, do more, be more.
It's true. It's everywhere you look, right?
Yeah.
But Dr. Takada's argument, and it's a really compelling one, is that after 60, the goal shifts. It's less about trying to build new muscle
Okay.
and more about maintaining what you've already got. So it's a different approach. Instead of always pushing for more, it's about finding that level of activity that helps you hold on to the muscle mass and strength that you have.
And that makes sense when you think about it. Like, our bodies do change. We can't deny that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not a bad thing. It's just part of life, right?
Totally, totally. So if we're shifting from building to maintaining muscle, how does that actually work? Like, what are we supposed to be doing differently?
Well, it's interesting because Dr. Takada talks about the importance of what he calls small stimuli.
Small stimuli.
Yeah, so it's like instead of those big, intense workouts, think more about incorporating movement into your everyday life. Things like, walking around the house, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, even just getting up to grab a book instead of asking someone else to get it for you. It's about those small, consistent movements that add up over time.
And I think that's something that a lot of people, myself included, tend to overlook.
It's easy to, right? Because it doesn't feel as impressive or intense as a hardcore gym session.
Right, exactly.
But those little things, they really do matter, especially as we age.
So how do we know if we're getting enough of those small stimuli movements or when we need to maybe step it up a bit?
That's a great question, and it's one that Dr. Takada actually addresses head-on. He says that we often underestimate how much movement we're actually already getting just by living our lives.
Really?
Yeah. He says even folks who aren't hitting the gym regularly are likely clocking in a decent amount of walking each day, just doing everyday things.
Huh. That's actually really encouraging to hear.
It is, right. Like maybe hitting those recommended activity levels isn't as daunting as we sometimes make it out to be.
Right, right. But then what happens when we hit our 60s, 70s, 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does it get harder to maintain muscle mass even if we are incorporating those small stimuli movements?
It can. Our bodies do become less efficient at using protein to build and maintain muscle as we get older. It's just a natural part of aging.
So even if we're doing all the right things, our bodies might not be using those building blocks as effectively as they used to.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not just about how much protein we're eating.
Oh, okay.
It's also about how well our bodies can actually use that protein to keep our muscles strong,
So it's like even if we're eating all the right things, our bodies might not be as efficient at actually putting those building blocks to use as we get older.
Exactly, exactly. And that's where diet becomes even more crucial, right?
Okay.
Because Dr. Takeda, he really stresses the importance of making sure that you're getting enough protein, especially after 60,
Gotcha.
because it can really make a difference in terms of, just supporting the muscle mass that you have.
So it's not just about building new muscle at this point.
Not as much, no. It's more about holding on to what you've got, Because as we age, our bodies naturally start to lose muscle mass, and that's a process called sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to avoid as much as possible, right?
Exactly.
Because losing muscle mass, that's linked to like a whole bunch of problems as we get older, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. I mean, think about it, like increased risk of falls, less mobility and independence as you age, and sarcopenia, it plays a role in all of that.
Yeah.
So maintaining that muscle mass is really key. But here's where Dr. Takeda's approach kind of takes a turn from what you usually hear.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, he always seems to have a different way of looking at things, so I'm curious, what's he got to say about this?
So he's actually a huge advocate for prioritizing injury prevention over, like, going all out with your workouts as you age.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Even if you're someone who's used to being active?
Especially then. Yeah, he's adamant about that. He points out that the older we get, it just takes our bodies longer to recover from injuries, even the minor ones.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And those injuries, they can have this kind of a snowball effect. Like, let's say you're out jogging and you tweak your knee.
Yeah.
So you have to stop exercising for a while to let it heal, which then leads to some muscle loss. And then suddenly, even just walking the dog is harder than it used to be.
Oof. Yeah, I can see how that could easily happen. It's like one thing leads to another. Just the other day I was walking down the stairs and I totally tripped on my own 2 feet.
Oh, no.
I know, and it was totally my fault. I wasn't paying attention or anything, but it just made me realize how much longer it takes for things to, feel back to normal again.
Exactly. And I think that's what Dr. Takada's getting at. It's not about saying you can never do anything that feels even slightly risky.
Right.
It's more about being smart about it, recognizing that your body might respond differently than it used to.
Being a little more cautious, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
So being smart about it. What does that actually look like? Like, does Dr. Takada give any, practical advice for how to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's got some great tips. Like, one of the things he talks about is just adapting your routine to fit your life and your body.
Okay.
As you age, it's not about trying to keep up with what you used to do. It's about making adjustments.
Gotcha.
Like he uses the example of stairs. If you find yourself, tripping on stairs more often.
Oh, yeah.
Or just, feeling a little unsteady, he says, skip them.
Really?
Yeah, take the elevator. Like, there's no shame in that.
It's about listening to your body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not about, giving up or anything like that. It's just about recognizing that what might have been no big deal a few years ago could be riskier now, and choosing the safer option, even if it feels, I don't know, like less impressive or whatever.
That's hardcore. Yeah.
Exactly. And he actually uses this great phrase. He says, don't hesitate to be a coward.
A coward.
Yeah, like he's obviously not saying to live your life in fear or anything,
All right.
but more just to let go of that need to push yourself past your limits, especially when it comes to exercise. Sometimes choosing the slightly easier option is actually the smarter and ultimately the healthier choice in the long run.
So it's about being kind to ourselves as we age.
Yeah.
Giving ourselves permission to slow down a little bit if we need to.
Exactly. It's like your body has earned a little extra TLC at this point.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about adapting our routines, being mindful of our limits. Anything else we should keep in mind?
Oh, yeah. He's a huge proponent of warming up properly.
Of course, yeah.
Which, that's important for everyone, but especially as we get older.
Right.
Stretching, gentle movements to get the blood flowing, all of that becomes even more crucial to help prevent injuries.
It's like he's saying those pre-workout rituals, those are non-negotiables.
They really are, yeah. He emphasizes that a lot. And then I think, going back to what we were talking about before about listening to your body,
yeah.
That's really key too, right? Like
yeah.
What feels sustainable and enjoyable in your 60s might need to be tweaked as you hit your 70s and 80s. It's an ongoing conversation with yourself, not a set it and forget it plan.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you can stay active and engage with your body for years to come.
Exactly. It's not about, becoming a marathon runner or a bodybuilder unless that's, your thing.
Right.
It's about making choices that support a long, healthy, fulfilling life, but on your own terms, at your own pace.
I love that. Finding that sweet spot and then rocking it.
Exactly.
Well, this has been so eye-opening. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive with Dr. Takada's work. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to rethink my own approach to exercise as I age.
Me too, me too. It's a good reminder that aging doesn't have to mean slowing down completely. It's just about finding a sustainable way to keep moving forward.